Paul Kagame has been the president of Rwanda since 2000, but has had a very dominant role in running the country right back to the time of the civil war of the 90s, when his rebels brought an end to the genocide. After a long period of rule, he faces the voters again tomorrow in a national election. And although pundits have got a lot of electoral predictions wrong recently, no one has much doubt that Kagame will still be in power after the ballot. For one thing, at the last election in 2010, he got 93% of the vote. And anyway, 3 potential opponents were disqualified from standing by the Electoral Commission there. But Kagame is a complex character and arouses very different reactions. Here he is speaking in 1999 about the genocide and chances of reconciliation.
Well, you can imagine somebody, an orphan, who has no father, no mother, no sisters, no relatives, all of them have been killed. You just don't come and try to force reconciliation down one's throat like that. We need to get together, we need to understand our history, we need to overcome it, we need to educate our people how to overcome that. But those who are responsible for the genocide have got to be punished.
Well, for some, he's just another African dictator, albeit a smooth-talking one. For others, he's a force for the stability despite some flaws. We'll hear both perspectives now. First, David Himbara is a former aide to President Kagame, who lives now in exile in Canada. And what was it that made you leave, David?
Well, my issue actually was more about statistical manipulations. He always wanted, he would basically dictate the percentages that the economic growth would have been achieved. But me, I was always uncomfortable, so I started opposing, and that would have been 2009. And as we were getting closer to the elections that were just mentioned, the place started to get a lot more violent. I decided that wasn't for me. I fled and I went to South Africa.
OK. And then there's going to be an election tomorrow. You obviously aren't going to be voting because you're in exile. We're certain he wins. Do you think it's a free and fair election?
No, it cannot be a fair election because the people who could have challenged him have been blocked from competing. Almost all the political parties are behind him. And he himself announced a few days ago that he'll win by 100%. So that's exactly what will happen. There's no opposition. In the early elections, some of the opposition leaders were imprisoned. They remain in prison. One of them was killed, and others fled into exile. So I'll be surprised indeed if he doesn't get 100%.
Right. I mean, look, he does seem to have a way with a lot of foreign leaders, doesn't he? I think Bill Clinton called him one of the great leaders of our time. What is it that you think makes him so kind of impressive to many others?
Basically, he has developed a brand about himself. He has branded himself as a kind of Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, who is developing Rwanda. And he argues that there is a trade-off. What has to be done now is economic development, while human rights and democracy can wait. A lot of people have bought into that. Plus, there was a bit of sympathy, given that the West
more
or less abandoned Rwanda during genocide. So those two factors has led people at least to turn a blind eye and buy the economic miracle. But the price is simply too high when you look at the total suppression of the population, David, violence in the neighboring Congo.
David, I just want a very, very quick 2 sentences on the UK aid programme, because you're critical, because we give aid to Rwanda, and you think this is the wrong thing to be doing now, right?
Yeah, the British aid is the worst aid because basically Britain dumps the taxpayers' money into Kagame's budget, and he's the one who decides what to do with that budget. So what happens to British aid, you will never know.
Okay.
David? At least other countries pass their Yes.
I need to move on to Andrew Mitchell, but your point is well made. Thank you very much for joining us. And with me now is the former International Development Secretary, Andrew Mitchell. Do you buy the criticism of aid? Because we were suspending aid, and you were the Secretary of State who came in and said, turn the tap on again and give him the cash.
Well, I suspended it and then I restored it, and indeed it has been restored not as general budget support, so David is actually wrong on that point, but as specific support to agriculture and education. And, you know, we know in Rwanda that the quality of the way our money is spent is yielding quite remarkable results. So, for example, in the last 3 or 4 years, Rwanda has managed to lift more than 1 million people out of poverty. It's a remarkable success story
and we know
in terms
that
of development.
David was saying he was making up the statistics, and so we know that from our own evidence rather than his evidence.
Yes, of course. The British taxpayers' money has to be followed by DFID very carefully, and it is in Rwanda.
David was saying that a lot of people basically take the view, sometimes you just trample over human rights if you can get the economy right. Now, is that your view of how development sometimes works?
No, it's not, because I think we're right to press, as we do with Rwanda, that they open up the political space more and that they open up the media space too. But the fact is, they've made remarkable progress in the last 20 years since this terrible genocide took place and the country was destroyed. And the truth is that President Kagame rescued his country while the world looked the other way and has built a stable and strong state. And, you know, if you are a waitress working in Kigali tonight, you can walk home safely. And for people like that, that is the first and most important human right, that the violence, the terrible violence in Rwanda was ended.
Do you think the election tomorrow will be free and fair?
Yes, I do. I think yes, I do. I think it will be. I suspect that he will win. I think his percentage will go down because the political space has been opened up. And although David is right that previous elections were marred by violence, that has not happened this time. In fact,
do we think his support? Because in the last 2 elections, he's been over 90%.
Yeah, well, yes.
Is that a true reflection of public support for him?
Well, you know, I really think it is, because this is a country that was destroyed by violence, where neighbour killed neighbour, and he's stopped that. He's built an economy that is strong. Virtually all children now go to school in Rwanda, and as I say, huge numbers have been lifted out of poverty. But we have to be careful in Britain and in the West, not judging this always through a Westminster lens. And I say this to you, that although previous elections were marred by elements of violence, this election, so far, has been entirely peaceful. Indeed, it has been more peaceful than the British election, which took place a few months ago.
Yeah, but he's pulled up. The Electoral Commission has banned some of the most credible opponents.
No, there was one opponent who didn't have the correct number of supporters on her nomination paper. Now, in Britain, if you and I stand in an election, we have to have, there are very strict rules, a certain number of supporters who are on the register in our constituencies. She was in breach of that rule, and if I had been in breach of that rule at the last election in Sutton Coldfield, I would have been struck off as well.
I'm listening to you, and I'm hearing your party mock and critique the Labour Party for its apologism for Venezuela and for Maduro and all that's going on there, and listening to you really taking a very unambivalent view of Kagame and what's going on there. Are you not just basically getting a bit starry-eyed in the way that others have?
No, you know, I first went to Rwanda in 2005. This is a country I know very well. We'll be taking the Conservative Party's social action Project Umubano there tomorrow night with 80 Tories and 6 MPs. We know Rwanda very well, and we know what is happening there. And I'm not mocking the Labour. I haven't said anything about the Labour Party in Venezuela, but I would argue that Rwanda and Venezuela are completely different
Rwanda's
countries.
better run than Venezuela.
Much better run, yeah.
Andrew Mitchell, thank you very much indeed. Thanks.